thank you. I want to thank Pat for inviting my part of the Commerce Department here. We were supposed to attend last year, but we had a little shutdown problem. Didn't quite make it. What we're going to try to do in the next half hour of two 15-minute presentations is to talk about the space industrial base and this major assessment. Let me introduce my colleague, Chris Nelson, who is the lead on it. And then we're also going to talk about export control reform. Same organization, different pieces. I'm kind of in the smaller part of the group, so you don't know us, but you know the export control folks. I'm going to throw a lot of data at you in a very short period. I've actually never given this presentation in 15 minutes. We have more information outside. I am in the low rent district outside, not in the main part of the booths here, and I thank GSA for that. So let's go on here. Who are we? Why can I do this? So why the Commerce Department? We have authority. My office has authority under the Defense Production Act, not DOD, but in fact Commerce Department, to do surveys and assessments, and that's pretty much been my career at Commerce. We do look at economic health and competitiveness, which of course is critical, but we also help our sister agencies in looking at defense capabilities and readiness. Why my group and not Deloitte or some other group? I have mandatory data collection authority under this same act. So we do get very good data. And what do we do with it? We actually aggregate it, analyze it, share it with the organizations that sponsor us. In this case, NRO, Air Force, and NASA to look at the space base and really try to find trends for them and give them some ideas. I liked this morning Jeff Gerson from X-Corps. I thought he hit it right on the head, that it really is a positive sum game here. We are trying to help out everybody, and if we're helping launch or you're helping launch through different commercial work you're doing, that also helps workforce issues, that also helps supply chain issues, that also helps Uncle Sam in their needs for employment and other activities for national security. So the background on this, we decided we were going to herd the cats. So we wanted to get NRO and Air Force and NASA to work together. Space environment, we've all been talking about the past 2 days, changing rapidly, not so much my partner agencies. Very stovepiped, as we noticed over the years. And I can say this because I'm not in the space business. We just come in and analyze. So we decided that we would give them one big bad study looking at the industrial base, looking at defense, intelligence, civil, and commercial portions of the industrial base. And really, it is one industrial base. Our objectives were to map it, to find interdependencies. And I think they got a taste of this. We did a study after the shuttle retired, and they saw what happens when particular companies disappeared and they didn't know they were working on other programs. So the interdependencies are key, the suppliers, the customers, the trends. So we decided to put this all together. Our normal surveys get back 200 to 300, maybe 400 surveys. This one, almost 3,800 survey responses. It was a pretty massive survey. So if you got a Brad Botwin survey, you know me. Mostly commercial companies. But we did have government agencies fill it out, universities. 62% of the respondents were small businesses. And of the businesses, two-thirds were privately held. And we have the financials on them, employment for a 4-year period, production data, CapEx, R&D spending. So a pretty good data set that you just cannot get anywhere else. On the right-hand side, gives you just a breakout by size from a sales perspective. And by the way, we collect business unit data. So let me pick on Boeing. I don't have Boeing commercial airplane data. I have Boeing space data. Not surprisingly, we expected this. Half the companies said they were in the space business. The other half, we don't do space. We do electronics, we do aircraft, we do energy, We do, even in some cases, healthcare work. So as you get further down in the supply chain, you really get away from the systems. They didn't know what systems they supported in many cases, which is interesting. So we had to come up with a very creative method to gather the information. And again, I give Chris a lot of credit for this. We came up with this product and service segments. So if you were 3 or 4 levels down in the supply chain making nuts, bolts, and screws, you could fill this out because we have, as you see on the screen, 16 general categories, segments. But that was broken out in the survey into 360 different categories. And we push this as a marketing assessment, really. Tell us what you can do. So everyone could fill it out if you were a distributor, whatever you did in the supply chain. And this covered for 205 plus space programs. Now, some things my customers like to see, obviously, sole source supplying. That's major concern for the government agencies, other government agencies. So we found 7,300 plus unique critical suppliers out there. And again, these are not every supplier to every system. These are the ones that you, industry, deemed critical when you filled out the survey form. For sole sourcing, you can see number 1, of course, integrated circuits, even chemicals are on there, particular things that you need that are showstoppers that are sole source. So we give the agency something to focus on instead of all suppliers. You can look at sole source suppliers or even single source, meaning there's one, there may be some others to buy from. So now instead of building you up, this is some of the fun things we can do with the data. This is the GPS-3, it's an Air Force program. This is what the supply chain for the critical suppliers looks like. Each dot on there, particularly as you get closer to the center, is a survey response. So I can pick out a particular company, pop it up, and I can give you their life story for the past 4 years. The outer ones, I have names and what they supplied. So we had to stop the survey process at some point. We just keep going on and on and on down to dirt. Embedded in this, and we told this to the Air Force because they said, this is funded, not a problem. I said, that's great. In the whole data set, we had 602 companies that told us that if there was another sequester, some budget cutbacks, they may be gone. Okay, 602 out of those 3,800. 43 of those companies are embedded in this program. We had 354 total companies that, frankly, you wouldn't put your retirement funds in them. And some of these are divisions of companies, by the way. 12 of them are embedded in the GPS program. So I said, Air Force, don't be too confident. You know, you have to watch. But now we can narrow it down to the companies you can look at. And then finally, let's go pick on the rest of my department. So NOAA, if the GOES-R program, which always runs over budget, maybe Congress says enough. You're not getting any more money for it. Kill the program. Well, a lot of these same suppliers work on that program also. So you can do everything right at the Air Force and we screw up at Commerce or something else happens. It's this interconnection. So I know everyone thinks they're an island unto themselves, particularly Barry at SpaceX, but in fact, everyone does work together here in the supply chain. I like Barry. What else about the supply chain? So if we go to the policymakers at the Pentagon, NRO, how do you come up with a policy to handle the space industrial base? On the right side of the screen, I've got the Northrop Grumman's and the Orbitals. Those guys are up to their eyeballs in government contracts. They're not going anywhere. So you can have policies for them. What about the other extreme, the kind of a little above 0 to 5% of their business? This could be a chemical company. This could be, who knows, Dow DuPont. Something you need, identified as critical. They don't really care what the space budget is. They're not going on the space budget. They're not going on if you're going to Mars. They could care less. They want to know, are they making enough money in this? Is EPA coming down their throats to shut down that particular product that you need? And is it just worth their time and effort? How do you come up with a policy to handle that to keep these guys alive in the space sector? That's the policymaker's problem. Oh, and by the way, half the companies not listed in the footnote said they are in the, not in the space business to begin with, even though we traced them into the supply chain. Other thing we tracked, we asked the companies, what else do you do? You just don't make a rocket, but what do you do? So they gave us their different business lines and the demand during this period for their business lines. And lo and behold, R&D and product design engineering, negative. Well, we know from talking to our other agencies that in fact there's less new programs coming through the system. And in fact, if I come back and do this again in 5 years or 10 years, there'll be less programs going through. That red is going to march across the screen. So we have some issues here. What are we going to do for design and R&D? So we're asking the agencies to focus on that. Workforce issues, and we have some. I can just sum it up, a lot on this chart, but basically the more dependent you were on the government for your space work, the more you lost staff over this block of time. Again, a bulk of this was the shuttle going away and Constellation not staying around totally. We asked the companies, what other things are bothering you? What are the issues that are affecting you being competitive out there? And we have the list in the blue, standard list. I've heard all these elements before, but we segregated it into the big guys and the small guys. The big guys, of course, competition. Everywhere we want no competition. Variability of demand. Government can't make up its mind what we are doing in space. And if we do, we all seem to want to do it the same year or 2 years in a row, and then nothing for a few years. So we need to kind of level this out. Export controls, the next speaker will talk. Little guys, healthcare issues, taxes, labor costs, nothing I can do about that. But getting into commercial space, presenting your innovative products to the government, that's great. We can maybe help in that area. Export control reform, just quickly, we looked at the regs that came out, and Chris identified 155 product and service areas that could be moved from ITAR to commerce. Almost 2,000 of our respondents make one of those products. And 1,200 of them have not even ever used export controls before. So we think there's great opportunity here if this all goes through, and Ray will give you the rah-rah on this, but we do need to do a lot of education on export control. 20 top customers, all in the blue. We can talk about this outside, but there's a strategic trade authorization license exception that may be for the countries that you are selling to now. You may be able to do a lot more due to the export control reform. Nice picture of our report. Let me just go into here, and maybe Pat, you'll invite us back next year. We're about to kick off a report with NASA looking at the propulsion supply chain. So SLS is slowly going forward, and yes, that little problem we have of a dependency on the Russians for an engine. So maybe we need to come up with an American version of it. So we will be assisting Marshall Spaceflight and NERPS and looking at the supply chain all the way down again, very focused on this. Okay, one of my guys did a lot of work on financials. This is just quick. These are the financials for the 3,800 entities that filled out the survey. Again, business units, about 10% of them were in the red. The sequester could make things, if we have another sequester, could make it work. We also broke it out by sector. Those 16 segments that I talked about, not fungible across the line. So if you have red or yellow, and we have another sequester, it may not be someone in the green for you to work with. So again, we can work with the other agencies in trying to resolve this. Great. Thank you very much.